हरिः ओम् गणानां त्वा गणपतिगुं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवस्तमं ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां ब्रह्मणस्पत आनश्वन्वन्नोतिभिः सीद श्रीमहागणाधिपतये नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। किमेतैरात्मनस्तुच्छैः सह देहेन नश्वरैः अनर्थैरर्थसङ्काशैः नित्यानन्दमहोदधेः. So this Atma, Atmanaha, Atma is Nityananda Mahodadhe. It is Ananda. Atma is Ananda. And you see, the word Ananda is different from Sukha. Sometimes the word Sukha may be used to mean Ananda, but when Ananda word is used, it must be clearly distinguished from Sukha. So, this is the Viveka, When you say Atma, you should not confuse Atma with the body. Atma is not the body. Similarly, you should have that Viveka. So, similarly, when the moment you hear Ananda, that should not be confused with Sukha. So, Sukha translated as pleasure has an opposite, the pain. Pleasure and pain. So, you see, you should have a correct understanding of the opposites. The opposites are always together. It is like, suppose you are having day. Now, even as you are having day, the ground is preparing for getting night. Already the things are arranging themselves in such a way that night will follow. It's not that the day ends and suddenly abruptly night comes. Not like that. The earth is slowly moving. You are enjoying the day. Even as you are enjoying the day, the night is getting ready. So night comes. So you can never separate the day and night. You cannot have day separate from night and vice versa. Not only that is one thing, you can never have them separate. Suppose somebody wants, we only have days, no nights. That is, no such thing is possible. Number one. Now that you have to know. Therefore, when you are seeking sukha, pleasure, you should know that it will bring some pain along with it. You cannot have pleasure alone, because the opposite is always inevitable. That is number one. Number two, the pleasure and pain, they are together in the sense that even as you are enjoying pleasure, you are creating pain. And you should not understand that this event or this gain is pleasure. Some other event, some other gain is pain. That kind of a watertight compartment like division between pleasure and pain is not there. It is all ignorance. This is what they call hangover effect. Namely, when you are enjoying pleasure, already you are preparing the ground for the pain. So you cannot have pleasure without pain. Now you decide whether you want the cycle of pleasure and pain, or you want Ananda, which transcends the opposites of pleasure and pain. So, this is one thing. This is the Viveka, the Ananda Mimamsa it is. The Viveka associated with the happiness. And then another thing, the pleasure is a state of mind as much as the pain. And everybody knows that pain is a very turbulent state of mind. That is how pain is. The mind becomes very turbulent in pain. But pleasure is no different. Pleasure is also like that. How? It is a state of mind, and then during pleasure the mind remains in turbulence, only of a different kind. So if you put it on a graph, so the upward turbulence is pleasure, the downward turbulence is pain. And so the mind remains in a state of turbulence, whether it is pain or pleasure. That's why the stress which is created by the hyperactivity of the mind, that doesn't distinguish between pleasure and pain. Stress gets created equally, whether it is pleasure or pain. People who are running after pleasures, they get stressed out as much as people who are subjected to intense pain. Equal stress, if not more. Sometimes these pleasure-seeking people are more stressed out than simple people who do not know any pleasures and who indeed lead a somewhat difficult life, or somewhat poor people, who lead a difficult life. They don't know that much stress. Whereas the people who are rich and who are accustomed to a rich and opulent type of life, they accumulate a lot of stress. That stress is coming from the hyperactivity of the mind associated with pleasure. Therefore, there is no wisdom, even there is no pragmatism in seeking pleasure. Pleasure is not what you should seek, because for all the reasons that I have explained, pleasure is as painful as any pain. Therefore, you should not seek pleasure. You should seek ananda. Ananda. And pleasure and pain are time bound. They happen and unhappen. In a time they happen, and another time they stop. Whereas ananda is timeless, nitya ananda. And then pleasure and pain are dependent upon the outside. There must be a contact for the sense organ with the sense object. Then only pleasure can happen. Whereas the pain also happens similarly. Whereas ananda is entirely independent. It doesn't depend upon the outer object at all. The outer world has nothing to contribute for the ananda. And ananda is yourself. You see, I will tell you one thing, you think about it. You should not even try to be happy, because you are the happiness. If you try to be happy, that effort to become happy is misery, because you happen to be happiness. You need not become happy. In fact, you should not try to become happy. It is like sugar crystal struggling to become sweet. It is the sweetness itself, and the struggle that it makes, that it struggles to become sweet, shows its ignorance, and then it makes it bitter. The struggle makes the sugar crystal bitter. I am just imagining, don't worry. So, similarly, that you struggle for happiness, to become happy, makes you unhappy and creates problems. That's why you should never try to be happy. So, you should never seek pleasure. Then you will not even know what is pain. And then what happens? You transcend the opposites of pleasure and pain, and you abide in that Swarupa, Atma, which is happiness itself. Happiness cannot become happy, need not become happy. It is happiness itself. That is what Atma is, timelessly Nityananda. And that happiness, you can partake of it, you can tap into it. It is not going to be exhausted. Mahodadhe. It is the infinite ocean of timeless happiness. That is what Atma. Atma is your own essence. That is what your essence is. And you have to discover that. This is the definition of that asanam, sthira sukham asanam. That's why in the meditation, I always point out that you sit in the posture where the body is in your command and the mind is in your command. You are abiding in the pure awareness, which is the peace, the silence, and it is love, and it is ananda, and it is your own. So, in an effort to become happy, you move away from yourself and thus lose all happiness. Therefore, Atma is to be, this is the Viveka about happiness. And just one more thing, the pleasure of the mind makes the mind very turbulent. The pleasure is a state of mind in which the mind is very turbulent and creates stress. Whereas Ananda, when you abide in your Swarupa as pure being and just be in that silence of the love, that is what it is. So that is peace, Shanti, and that Shanti is Ananda, that Shanti is Prema. They are all one and the same. That is the Atma, that is the Brahman or Ishvara. And in that the mind is silent, and therefore mind doesn't generate stress. On the other hand, whatever stress is already generated will melt away, and mind becomes stress-free. And as mind becomes pure, it becomes stress-free, then you will not become sick even physically. People ask, what is the secret of his good health? The Mahatma's good health, what is the secret? The secret is that their mind is calm and quiet. It is mostly silent. Why? Because they are not seeking any pleasures, and therefore they are free from pain, and this cycle is out for them. So they abide in their Swarupa, which is Atma. And as long as they abide in that Swarupa, mind remains pure. Pure means silent mind. The silent mind is a pure mind. A calm mind is a pure mind, whereas a turbulent mind is an impure mind. And therefore, even if you want to be practical, leave alone moksha, brahma and all that, even in a very practical sense, as people age, they become middle-aged and then they become old and gradually become victims of various illnesses. So even to be able to handle this old age or the sickness, any sickness, so you should have that space. So one should not be obsessed about the welfare of the body. One should have that space, and so that space you will get by abiding in Atma and gaining that happiness which is Shanti, which is love of the Atma, and stop seeking all pleasures of this world altogether. It's not that stop seeking a little or a lot, no, altogether. Avoid any seeking of pleasure and avoid any effort to be happy, to become happy. Don't ever make any effort to become happy. Just be, that's all. You make an effort to become happy. The happiness that is supposed to come by effort is misery, it is not happiness. So, this is the Mimamsa of Ananda. This being so Nityananda Mahodadheha Atmanaha, so what is the use of these pleasures? Tuchaihi, they are worthless, and what kind of pleasures they are? Dehena nashvaraihi. You see, suppose in every pleasure that you seek, there is the participation of the physical body. And if the physical body is sick, the pleasure ends then and there. Suppose you have the pleasure of a dinner party, and just before going to the dinner party, the stomach becomes acidic. Now what party you will not be able to enjoy the party. Or there is a small infection. You see, you will not be able to enjoy any party. Small infection is enough. And even if you gulp a very powerful single dose antibiotic, it requires 12 hours to take effect. Therefore the party is out. You cannot enjoy the party. Even a severe headache is enough to put a full stop to the party. And so this is how the body is. And then, okay, now you go to the party. The body is in good condition, the party is going on hilariously. How long can it go? How long? I tell you, the instruments of this pleasure seeking, namely the body, the sense organs and the mind, they will wear out. They cannot sustain this intensive pleasure seeking. They will wear out. And then, dehena nashvaraihi. As the body disintegrates, all pleasures that come with body, they are gone. And tuchha, they are worthless. Why do you pursue them? And then anarthai. They are a calamity in life. But artha sankashaihi. They appear, in fact, they shine brilliantly as though they are great achievements in life. Artha sankashaihi. Like that it shines. So, when you see some of these things, so an ignorant person, an inexperienced young person, younger, middle-aged, whatever, Viveka should come. It is not the age that matters. So, he gets carried away. Oh, what a beautiful thing it is. How pleasurable it would be. He sees a commercial and believes that we are missing all that pleasure. That is what he believes. Because it looks very attractive and really, really enticing. That is how it looks. And it is so brilliant, shining brilliantly, marvelously, like 42nd Street in Manhattan. It is all Mayanagari. Very attractive and very enticing. And when you see it sitting in India, you see it in a Hollywood movie, you feel this is the heaven that the Puranas describe. And we bitterly miss this heaven. It looks like that. Artha Sankasha. But then you go into it, it will destroy your life. Anarthaihi, Artha Sankashaihi. So, people should have that wisdom. Otherwise they will say, how will it destroy? They ask. No, it doesn't seem to destroy. They ask like that. I will not be able to explain it. You should understand the human experience correctly and you should gauge it right way. Then you will know the calamity associated with the pursuit of riches and pleasures. It is a calamity in life, nothing short of a calamity. Anartha it is. That's why Shankara said, Artham anartham bhavaya nityam nasti tataha sukha leshas satyam. So very powerful words. So what happens is, these arthas, these pleasures, etc., so they make us servile. And so when we cling to them because of our ignorance, and we cling to them, as we cling to the things of the world, there is only trouble, nothing else. There is only trouble. You cling to things, you cling to wealth, there is only trouble for you. It is brewing all around you when you cling to wealth. And when you cling to pleasures, you are creating insurmountable trouble for yourself. So, on the other hand, when you cling to nothing, no trouble arises. You should know that. So you should not think that clinging is important, necessary. We are living in the modern world, we are living in Canada, therefore clinging is necessary. All such self-defeating arguments should not be allowed to come anywhere near. So you should be able to see the truth. And the pleasure at the level of the body and mind versus vis-a-vis the infinite happiness of the timeless Atma. So what is it that you are seeking? What is it that you should seek? You should seek the timeless happiness of the Atma. And in the process, you should be ready to give up the lesser, Even if that lesser is worthwhile, you should be ready to give up. Even if it is worthwhile. It is not even worthwhile. What is the problem in giving up? So, the relinquishing of the lesser is important, is indeed the gaining of the greater. So, give up all, you gain all. This is how it works. You have to think about it. And please don't think that I am bothering you to give up and all that, or I am here to collect or any such thing. There is no such thing. You have to work up all these things yourself. So, when you give up all these pleasures, then the life becomes a pure radiation of joy, inner joy, from an inexhaustible source of love and happiness, which is Atma, Mahodadhe. So that is what life becomes. When you give up the lesser, that is what life is meant to be. The life is not meant to pursue or cling to these silly worldly things. So, when you discover that Atma, that pure radiation of light, of awareness, of pure being, of love, an inexhaustible source of happiness, when you discover that Atma, in that light, the world appears like a dream. Very dim it is. Like in the daytime, when the sun is shining brilliantly, the moon appears very dull. You still can find moon in the sky, but you cannot find it readily because it is so dull. So similarly, when you discover that Atma, which is the Nityananda Mahodadhi, then the world, the pleasures that it can offer, etc., appear very dim and like a dream they are. They are not real at all. You see, the dream continues. The dream is like a movie. It has a momentum in the flow of time. So the dream continues, and the dream is not the problem. It is your desire to cling to it that creates the problem. The dream is not a problem. So that desire to cling to it, you have to let go. And then you have to stop imagining that this dream is real. You have to stop imagining that this dream is yours. So all that you have to stop. You have to allow the dream to roll to its very end without clinging to it. And so you just look at the dream as a dream, refuse to give reality to it. So that is what the poet means when he says, Tuchchaihi, so dehena saha nashvaraihi. Why do you want to accumulate all these things? They are not worth accumulating. This is Prahlada, So, I understand, you see, family life and the aspirations and the trials and tribulations of a family person are not unknown to me. They are not unknown. I know that. And also, I can sympathize. It's not that I have a very hard heart that I cannot sympathize with the issues of family people. I can sympathize also. But I see like daylight that all these trials and tribulations are mostly a product of ignorance. Some of it could be prarabdha that was created in earlier, which we cannot help now. Some of it is prarabdha. But suppose a child is not very intelligent, that kind of a thing, or less intelligent than normal, and therefore there is no proper growth, etc. So that kind of a thing is a part of the prarabdha. But most of the trials and tribulations that family people undergo, any people for that matter, that human being undergoes in life, is a creation of oneself entirely due to the ignorance. And in our ignorance, we imagine things and we end up believing that our imagination is true, and we pursue the things of the world assuming them to be real. In the process, we create endless trouble to ourselves. Nirupyata miha swarthaha Kiyan deha bhruto suraha nishekadishvavasthasu klishyamanasya karmabhihi. The human being begins a life with a nisheka. Nisheka is like the jiva comes into the mother's womb. That is the nisheka. And then starts a life, a flow, or a run. It is a run, continuously running. So life continues like that. And then it continues and continues under nisheka, and then birth, and then the child is growing from the jiva's point of view. So the child is growing, and then became a young boy or young girl, then became quite young teenager, then became young university graduate or in the very youth, prime of the youth, and then middle age, then a later part of the middle age, and middle age syndrome, all that. And then the old age, and so the problems associated with old age, physical and psychological, then sickness, and then terminal illness, and then death. Kya baat hai bhai? And in the middle, karma bhihi. He imagines things, and so he has desires. So to fulfill these desires, he has to perform rituals or worldly actions. Need not be rituals all the time. And so, karma bhihi klishyamanasya. So this human being is afflicted by all these karmas. And so asuraha, or asura balakas, so Prahlada is addressing. And so, kiyan deha bhrutaha swarthaha nirupyatam. This is what is life. And in this life, and in this world, what enjoyment can be there for the individual in the world? What enjoyment can be there? You see, there is no true enjoyment in a life that is steeped in worldliness. There is no enjoyment. Because you constantly face all trials and difficulties, and you have to perform different actions to overcome those difficulties. And then to add it to all that, the desires and fears play havoc with the people's lives. And so, in this life, starting from the mother's womb to the cremation ground, how much enjoyment one can gain while one is permanently bothered by all these actions, desires and fears and all that. Therefore, do not invest or do not trust or do not depend upon the world, the body, the sense organs and the mind. This is the apparatus. On one side you have the world of objects and pleasures and wealth, etc. And on the other side, to relate to that world, you have a physico-psychological apparatus or psychophysical apparatus, whatever you want to call it. So that is what you have. Don't depend upon this combination. It doesn't make you fulfilled because it is just unreal. It's like a dream. The Atma alone is real. And so you have to understand that. And you have to understand the utter folly of actions, worldly or ritualistic, secular actions or religious actions that are aimed at fulfilling desires. They are a disaster in people's lives. And so one should understand that. You see, family people, they are compelled to pursue some desires. The human mind's weakness is like that. It is like a mother, she desires my daughter or my son should come up in life. That is the desire she has. And people ask me, what is wrong with the desire? You see, I am not jealous of her having a desire and getting it fulfilled. I am not trying to be a spoil sport that her desire should not be fulfilled or she should give up. You got it all wrong. Because she has a desire for her son. What is this desire? She has a blueprint for her son. Blueprint of life. She has worked it out perfectly. Sometimes in consultation with her husband, so sometimes both of them together, quite often herself, worked out the entire blueprint. So she has, now everything is worked out. Only it's a matter of time rolling and those things becoming real. Like he has to pass B.Tech in first class. It is already well set, one event. Only time has to come. It requires time. He is still in the third year, so it takes another 2 years. And then he has to get a seat in MS. And then after that also time has to roll on. Another 2 years it has to go. Then he should get a job in IBM. And then he should come home and tell parents, dear parents, now I feel like getting married. You decide which girl I want to marry. I have to marry. And I need not even look at her. If you look at her and if you are satisfied that she is good looking, I am satisfied. Your ears and your eyes are my ears and my eyes. I look at the world from your eyes. And so he should say that. And then they have already decided one young girl who brings a good amount of dowry and all that, coming from a good family, very traditional family, very orthodox family, and in which family there are all rituals, etc. are performed quite well. So they have all worked out. The entire blueprint they have kept ready, worked out. And then the girl should be very polite and very obliging to the in-laws also. And she should become pregnant in good time. And then she should give birth to a male child. Now I say, dear mother, you are creating all trouble for yourself. All trouble. Suppose you do not desire anything for your son, suppose. You will not know what is trouble. The life rolls on. There is a momentum to the life. It has its own dynamics. Every jiva, every individual has to go through those dynamics. There is no exception. Rama is not an exception, Krishna is not an exception. Christ is not an exception, Buddha is not an exception. It has to roll on. And there is a higher power which is playing it out. And so we remain as a silent witness. We accept the positive as well as the negative with an equanimity of the mind. And so freedom from all desires is a absolute ananda it is. And on the other hand, all attachment implies fear. All attachment. In India, the parents want their son and daughter to go to America. Generally son, not that much about daughter. They want their son to go to America. And then, nothing wrong in it. It should happen. All our people should come and occupy the places in university, etc. and come up. I am for that. And but even as they get attached to that very deeply, there is already fear. You know how much fear? Whether visa you will get or not. You cannot believe how much fear people have about visa. Because American visa, it is not just given like that. Somehow they give 50% visas alone, they give 50% or even less than that. On a given day, or in any given season, if there are 100 applications for people to higher studies, some 20-30 applications alone get visas. Not all. And how it works, they have their own mechanism. And therefore visas are refused left and right. And the parent's heart is broken. And they live in fear, virtual fear. Literally they live under fear. And if one Mahatma says, doing Pada Puja will bring visa to you, they will rush to that Mahatma and do Pada Puja. And if somebody says going to the temple and doing that Sahasra Puja will get visa for you, they will rush there and do it. They are driven by fear. Why should we like that? If they give visa, we will go. Otherwise, we will stay where we are. You have a home, you have a family, and then there are jobs for young people in private. Government may not give jobs, but private jobs are there. Or there can be higher studies within India itself. Why should we be so crazy about it? This is how all attachment implies fear. And finally, all things are transient. They are not real. And fear makes a person into a slave. Therefore, this is the attachment. Attachment is not love. In attachment, you cling to things. In love, you do not cling. Love does not cling. Clinging is not love. And therefore, the human being, so this is how they suffer in life. Karmanyarabhate dehi. So I wanted to say, if there is a compelling desire, nothing wrong in it. You may keep it. If you are sure that it is very genuine and nothing wrong in it, you are, as a family person, as a grahastha, you are entitled to that, you are welcome to keep it. And every desire puts us on a chain of actions. So be ready for that. And then if some rituals are to be performed to fulfill a meaningful, genuine, very compelling desire, by all means, for God's sake, please go ahead and do it. But you have to think twice before pursuing any given desire. So, unfortunately, we imagine things. And as we go on imagining, so newer and newer desires are born from that imagination. And the desires will lead to fear. And all craving that we have for things is due to a sense of insufficiency. And you have to know that you are the infinite ocean of bliss, that is the Atma. You have to know that you lack nothing. You have to know that. Sitting here, I can remain sad or unhappy that I don't have this, I don't have that. On the other hand, if only I have viveka to see, what do I lack? I lack nothing. I lack nothing. I have everything that a human being needs to lead a simple and peaceful life. What do I lack? I lack nothing. If I have to remain frozen in this position, I welcome it. I don't want any change to happen in what I am now or what I have now. I lack nothing. I have to see that. On the other hand, if the present position, being a part of the flow of time, it rolls on to something else, I will roll on. I don't stop it. If I have to go elsewhere, I will go. But I don't lose sight of the basic truth, namely, I lack nothing. That is the truth. With every human being, that is the truth. And we miss that truth. And then start imagining. You may go on imagining. Oh, this should be, I have, this will be better, this I need, that I need. Like that, imagine and imagine and imagine. And then the mystery of imagination, I told many a time, it is the mystery of imagination that it appears real. And therefore pursue that imagination. And that leads to a number of desires and fears. Now you are deep in the samsara. So What is the value of this samsara? What is the value of these karmas, etc., without the knowledge of the self? So that is how he is asking. And he talks about these karmas. Karmanyarabhate dehi dehenatmanuvartina karmabhistanute deham ubhayantva vivekataha. Please come. You are not a disturbance. Please come and settle comfortably. Please come. Settle at the right place. Dehi, deha. These two words are used in this verse itself, you find them. And of course, Gitacharya uses the words dehi and deha. Dehi is the embodied. Deha is the body. You see, you should not look at yourself as mere deha. So, deha is healthy. You should not say, I am healthy. You should say, body is doing fine. You should never ever identify with the body. And body is not doing so well. Even in the language, you should be careful to not to identify, even in the language, because you should disidentify with the body. Literally, I am not the body. You say that 100 times. You say that if you need to say. Disidentify literally, and then disidentify emotionally. Emotionally disidentify means, shall I tell you what it is? So, today my birthday. That is the emotion. Emotion, you know. Oh, I was born this day. Just I told you emotional identification, how it will be. And there is a big smile on the face. Arepa, some children, school-going children, these school teachers, they push them. Your birthday, when is your birthday? Like that, the school teachers push them. The teachers have to engage these kids for 6 hours or 5 hours, so they put all kinds of useful things and also useless things into their mind. And one of them is this thing. And therefore the child, 3-year kid or 5-year kid, whatever you put into that mind, it will grab it. And so the kid says, my birthday, like that. This guy is a 50-year-old, 60-year-old, it is very unbecoming of him to behave like that. Could be. Please don't mind. So, this is one viewpoint, a kind of an extreme viewpoint, I suppose. So, disidentify emotionally. It could be, need not be birthday only. The blessed thing need not be birthday only. My hair is very beautiful. What do you mean by my hair is very beautiful? That kind of emotional identification. So, you should get rid of it. Emotionally, don't identify with the body. Intellectually, don't identify, disidentify with the body. And you meditate upon that disidentification. You need to do that. I sincerely advise you, do that. That's why I incorporate into every meditation, so that I see its value in facing the vicissitudes of life. Life is going to be, it is going to throw many, many challenges as it rolls on, and we should be well prepared to face those challenges, and this is the preparation. Because I tell you one general truth, basic truth, falsehood makes you suffer. Truth never makes you suffer. It is always the falsehood that makes us suffer. Therefore, pay attention to the Gitacharya, Shri Krishna's teaching. Pay attention to that. Shri Krishna means you should, your focus should be on that. Not Murali, dance and Chapan Bhog, not all those things. That is a kind of a distortion of Shri Krishna. Shri Krishna means Dehinosmin yatha dehe. That is Shri Krishna. Idam shariram kaunteya. That is Shri Krishna. He makes a clear distinction. Deha versus Dehi. Asmin dehe, in this body, I am the dehi, the embodied. The body and the embodied, they do not belong to the same order of reality. They belong to a different order of reality. The body is now born, it is now growing, and it will mature, and then it will disintegrate, it will decline, and it will die. Whereas the embodied, it doesn't take birth, it doesn't die, it doesn't grow, it doesn't decline, it is changeless, timelessly changeless is the embodied. Keep the distinction. Don't confuse between the two. Don't mix the sugar with the dust. Don't do that mistake in life. You will be spoiling the sugar and you will not do any benefit to the dust by mixing up sugar with the dust. Don't do that mistake. So keep dust separate and sugar separate. Deha separate and Dehi separate. Deha remains in good condition. Dehi is not deluded. But unfortunately, Dehi identifies with the Deha. Dehena Atmanuvartina. He identifies with the Deha and ends up believing that body is myself. Myself. Self is what I am, and that self is the body. How? Why this kind of a mix-up? Avivekataha. I am explaining the verse. I do not leave the text. You think that I am going everywhere, therefore I have left the text. No. I am with the text all the way. Avivekataha. Because there is this ignorance, non-discrimination. Avivekataha. You see, you should be able to discriminate, what is called discernment. You should be able to discern the body versus myself. That discernment should be there. But when that is absent, then karmanyarabhate. So the embodied is not the doer. It is always the body-mind is the doer. Never the awareful being that is reflecting in the body-mind. So, you see, it is the water is moving and the reflection of the moon in the water appears to move, but the moon doesn't move. You are like that. Therefore, you should not take the movement of the body-mind as your own movement. You should discover that space you have to discover. I am talking of not some armchair philosophy. I am talking of very practical things. This is something which you have to discover. You have to discover now and here. You have to discover. You listen to the Shastra, you reflect upon the Shastra, you read it, the right kind of reading, and then you meditate and discover the space between yourself and the body-mind. And in discovering so, you will discover that the body-mind is functioning, but you remain changeless being. You don't reach there on day one. First of all, you have to disassociate from the body-mind and learn to abide in that changeless being. You have to do that. And as you practice it, meditation, as you practice it well, then gradually you get a knack of abiding in your being. Being versus doing. Thinking is also doing. Thinking is also a doing at a very certain level. So thinking and doing are the body, mind, and being is the Atma. That is the distinction. And you should not identify with the thinking, doing all the time. You should remain unidentified with the thought and with the body. Means unidentified with the thinking and the doing. Body is doing and thought is thinking. So unidentified. And then you abide in your pure being. And then gradually you get centered there. That is your center. That is your source. That is the source which you are. That is what you are. Not this doing, thinking. Thinking, doing, you are not. You are that pure being. First you should know being distinct from thinking, doing. Being distinct from thinking, doing. You should know that. How do you know? By being the being, you know the being. You don't know it, it will not come and stand before you to know. You know it by being. You know the Atma by being the Atma. And so do meditation. So be that. Be, just be. And discover your being. And then abide in that being. As you do that, you get centered. You discover your center. Not in thinking, doing. You discover your center in being. And then you develop a knack of remaining there, even while acting. Suppose you go for a walk. You can try it while you are walking. But first you should establish yourself in the being, not without that. So first you should find your source and stay in that source. And then try in small things. Washing the hands. You be. There is the movement of the hands, but you still remain fixed in the being. Like that, washing the dishes, still you are fixed in the being. Taking a walk when you are alone, still you are fixed in the being, even while walking. So like that. This is how you have to discover that there is doing, but I am not the doer. I am Atma is not Karta. But there is doing. There is doing. I am not the doer. Doing happens. I am not the doer. I am Akarta. This is what you have to know. But avivekataha. There is no viveka. So being is confused with the thinking. People confuse being with thinking. They think their thinking is that I am thinking, that is my being. Thinking is not your being. I have a degree, that is my being. Degree is intellect, that is not your being. I am the body, that is my being. No. I have accomplished this, means some action, that is my being. No. That is not your being at all. Don't confuse being with doing. Being is different, doing is different. Being is Atma, doing is body-mind. But when the viveka is missing, avivekataha, karmani arabhate, he assumes that he is the doer. And he is the dehi, not the deha, but he believes that he is the deha. He is the non-doer. There is doing. He is the non-doer, but he believes that he is the doer. A twofold confusion. That is what he is pointing it out. Karmani arabhate dehi, dehena atmanuvartina, karmabhis tanute deham, ubhayantu avivekataha. Okay, you are the doer by mistake. By mistake you are the doer, and when you are the doer by mistake, so the mistake, it continues, and so karmas accumulate. And therefore, with the body, first identify with the body, then become a doer and do karmas. And those karmas accumulate, and you are the karmi, and therefore this body will go, and then they create another body. So what a misfortune. So you make one mistake, then compound it with another mistake. Then this whole life is a flow of actions and their results and suffering. And then this life ends at last. Another life is just waiting there. One more body. This is the folly. So you have to know that you are not the body and you are not the doer. So these things sound very peculiar, So, you see, in this doership, etc., people are sometimes very clever. They are very clever. So they say, oh, everything is Bhagavan, like that. So, suppose some calamity came. Oh, it is Bhagavan has done this, Bhagavan has done that. But suppose some good things are there, I have done it. So like that. They bring in Bhagavan in a very convenient way. This kind of cleverness doesn't work, I tell you. You see, there was a... so I must have told this anecdote. Anyway, I suddenly remembered there are some new people also. So there was a rich man. He has a palace, a bungalow. And then a large ground around the bungalow. That is part of the riches. So in that ground, then grass. This grass, only rich people grow grass and cut it. Ordinary people don't do such silly things. They don't have time for all that. And sadhus should not do such things. Because growing the grass and cutting it is all himsa. Why should we do that? So, anyway, so he has a lawn. And roses. You should have tulasi. Not roses. But anyway, roses. And then you see, people may say, Swami TV doesn't like roses. You see, I do not like roses. I do not dislike them also. I just leave them where they are. Anyway, I am a funny guy. I have my own unsophisticated way of living. Anyway, so this is the garden. And he has a gate to the garden. This is India, you know. So, in India you need to have a compound wall, a gate and all that. So, and that gate should be kept closed. Somehow, somebody did not close it properly. This cow, there are cows roaming around on the street. And where your gate ends, their street begins. That is also there. It's not like Toronto, where between the road and the gate there is a lawn and then a sidewalk and some trees and again some more lawn. Then the road begins. That is Toronto. So, therefore this cow, it was wandering on the road. It is searching for food. It doesn't have food. It eats all kinds of things. And then it saw this lush green lawn and also some trees, everything green. And lo behold, the door is open. And the cow entered inside. And it did not get such a... In cities, cows won't get grass and all that. Lush green grass. Very tasty, and it was eating. This man saw. He was furious because his flower bed is trampled upon and its roses are spoiled and the grass is growing it with a lot of trouble. And he has put fertilizer, this and that, and it is imported grass also, not local grass. And so this cow, it is just spoiled everything. Thousands of rupees worth of garden it has already spoiled. So he was furious and he was having a blunt instrument in his hand and he threw it with all his might. And it hit the cow in a very soft spot and the cow died. A story. It's a story, don't take it literally. And now, when the cow is killed, there is a thing called Gohatya Patakam, the sin of killing a cow. That sin has a shape also. And now that is the shape of a demon. So this demon, it got up. Then this rich man got stunned. There is the cow dead, and then this demon got up from there. Who are you? I am the sin of killing the cow. Gohatya. Okay. So what do you want? I have to come and embrace you because you killed the cow. No, I did not kill the cow. Then who killed? The hand killed, not I. And a hand has the power given to it by Lord Indra. Because Indra is the presiding deity for the hand. He had this in temple. Indro me bale shritaha. This is what he had in the temple. Very clever guy. And therefore, the hand is moved by the Lord Indra. That is his power which moves the hand. And so Indra has killed you. Then this Gohatya, it was a bit confused, but his argument seems to be in place. And therefore it went to Indra. Indra has got rid of Brahmahatya just then. And he took a bath because he could at last, after 3 days of fasting or whatever, he had this Brahmahatya sitting on him. And so he now got rid of, and he is feeling very fresh and free. So this Gohatya came. He asked, what are you doing? Where are you going? I am not going anywhere. I am coming to you only. Oh my goodness, why? Just now I got rid of Brahmahatya. Now you want to come and sit on me. I cannot bear these Hatyas anymore. So why do you want to come to me? What I have done? You see, that Sethji, that rich man has killed the cow, and his hand, it runs by you are the deity for the hand. Therefore, you are the doer. Therefore, I am coming and embracing you. He says, oh my God, this is, he doesn't understand now what to do. Are you not the presiding deity for the hand? Yes, I am that. Then I am coming and embracing you. No, just wait. There is something missing here. Let me ask Bruhaspati. And he asked Bruhaspati, what is this? The cow gets killed and I get the Brahmahatya, the Gohatya. Then Bruhaspati also was not able to understand. Therefore, both of them took this Gohatya. Let us settle before Brahmadeva. They went to Brahmadeva. It's a Puranic story. And Brahmadeva was confused. Because Indro me bale shritaha. Indra is the presiding deity for power. And therefore Indra must be the killer, the one who killed. Then generally whenever they have such a dilemma, they go to Vishnu. So they went to Vishnu. And Vishnu told, you go home. You don't worry. You do not get this Gohatya. But somebody should get it. It is created, So he told Gohatya, you come with me. And he took the Gohatya and went back to that rich man's home. And he asked the Gohatya, just remain here. Don't be in a big hurry. Don't create any scene. Just wait here. I will show you to whom you should go and embrace. You will do that. Just wait here. Okay? Then he took the form of an old Vedic scholar. And he opened the door. The door was closed. He opened the door. Door means that the gate was closed. He opened the gate and went inside. The Sethji was there. And already the dead cow is removed from the scene, but the Sethji was there. Then he blessed the Sethji, the rich man. Oh, may God give you all wealth, this and that. He was very happy to receive these blessings, coming from a Vedic Pandit and all that. So, then, so I will give you some dakshina. Please come. Very nice of you. So I came to bless you and you will give me some nice dakshina. Very glad. And you will flourish this and that. Then he asked, this palace is a wonderful palace. Who made it? The rich man, I made it. Very, very nice. Great palace. You are a great accomplished person. The garden around it is even more beautiful, very befitting the palace. So, how did you get this garden? I did not get it easy. I struggled and invested a lot of money and got it. And I made this garden also. Oh, is it? How come that bed of roses is trampled and there seems to be something lying there till now? Yeah, one silly cow entered and trampled it. And so what happened to that cow? It died. Then who killed it? Indra killed it. No, Indra did not kill. You only killed it. Because you made this palace. You made this garden. Oh, Gohatya, come here. Go and embrace this guy. This is how it happens. So, if you are a doer, then you are doer of everything. Good and bad, everything. The samsara will follow. Gohatya will come. And any great ritual you have performed, that also will come. And all these plus and minus, they are always together, they will come. Nobody can avoid that. But if you are not a doer, then nothing, even Gohatya cannot touch you. So, one is a doer only by ignorance, aviveka. And one is the body only by ignorance. That is the essence of that verse. Tasmadarthascha kamascha dharmascha yadapashrayaha bhajatani hayatmanam aniham harimishwaram. Tasmat, therefore, artha kama dharma. Artha is wealth, kama is pleasures, dharma is the merit that you want to derive for gaining heaven, etc. That is the dharma here. Not atma dharma and all that. That is the dharma in that context. Dharmaha, plural, means rituals aimed at gaining the higher lokas or higher pleasures, etc. So these are the three. These three you give up. You don't run after them. Then if we give up dharma, artha, kama, then what is left? Harim Ishwaram Bhajata. You worship or contemplate upon or practice the devotion of Bhajata, practice the devotion of Ishvara, the Sarveshvara, who is Hari. As I told earlier, Hari, who will put an end to the afflictions in one's heart. Harati iti Harihi. You worship Ishvara, but on condition, Anihaya. Iha is desire. Anihaya. So this point will be coming again and again. Just worship Ishvara for the love of worshipping Ishvara. Don't again introduce some desire there. In fact, there will be no desire. Once artha, kama, dharma are kept aside, there is no desire left. Even moksha also, to begin with, we say you should be a mumukshu, you should seek moksha. That only means artha, kama and dharma for the heaven sake. That is the dharma. So not that you should not speak truth and all that. Not the dharma is the ritual. So dharmartha kama, the rituals meant for artha kama here and hereafter, is called dharma. So these three you keep aside. Hold on to moksha. That is the first step. That is the moksha, mumukshutva. Then next step is moksha you already are. So as long as you want moksha, it looks as if the moksha is somewhere away. Therefore, you realize that you are the moksha and keep quiet. So give up moksha also. But don't give up worship of Ishvara. That alone you keep. So if I don't need anything, then why should I worship Ishvara? So that is the beauty of Ishvara. If you reach a stage when you worship Ishvara knowing not what is the purpose, then that is called spontaneity of love. Then you have reached the goal. Because the moment you say purpose, that is the mind which is seeking. Purpose is always mind-made. Purpose, result, benefit. What is the benefit that will accrue to me? That is mind-made. Suppose you are doing some service to the parents. Do you need a purpose or a result or a benefit to be fixed beforehand? Do you need it? Suppose you need it, What kind of service it is? Do you call it worthy service? Certainly not. You serve the elders, the parents, knowing not why you are serving. You worship Ishvara, knowing not why you are worshipping Ishvara. You do charity, knowing not why you are doing it. You love, knowing not why you love. That is where you should reach. The moment you seek a purpose, you have already become engrossed in the movement of the mind. Because it is the pastime of the mind, seeking purposes, results, benefits, etc. That is the mind. So, and one more thing, what is wrong with mind? I tell you, anything that the mind wants has no value. That is what mind is. Mind cannot conceive the real. And whatever mind conceives and wants is not real. Therefore, why do you worry about purpose? So, anihaya. That is called spontaneity. You are seeking purpose means it becomes deliberate. And so, it becomes very contriving. Whereas, when you don't have any purpose, like the rose, it blossoms. It doesn't seek a purpose. It spreads fragrance. Doesn't seek a purpose. It just does, all this it does in a very spontaneous way. The sun, the moon, the birds, the trees, the wind, the breeze, the waters, the earth, they don't seek a purpose. They are spontaneous. You are part of all that, so why should you seek a purpose? So anihaya, you worship Ishvara without seeking any purpose or any such thing, very spontaneously. And very interestingly, Atmanam, Ishvara happens to be Atma. Atmanam Harim. And Aniham, in Atma there are no desires. Desire is located in the mind. That's why Gita Acharya Shri Krishna says, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan. So manogatan. The desire is manogatan. It comes into the mind. Or it comes from the vasanas which are the mind. From there it comes. And very interestingly, it comes, and if you allow it to go, it will go. That is how the mind is. But if you are interested in it, it won't go. Now it binds you. It is like a whiff of smoke. The thought, the desire is like a whiff of smoke. You just ignore it, it will dissipate. But if you hold it, then it will hold you. You don't hold it, it will hold you. So, this is the way life moves. And therefore, Harim Atmanam. So, he is your Atma. The Atma which is not touched by desires and fears. Aneham. So, you please worship. O Asura Balakas, worship Ishvara. A desireless worship. One should do like that. A king has 3 wives, 3 queens, and he was going to London. That is the British Raj, you know. So they visit London. That is the status. And so he asked the first king, what shall I bring from London? She said, in London, the jewel market is supreme. You know, in India it is all imported stuff. So De Beer, etc. will be there. The great jewel, great diamond people. And so you bring me a diamond necklace. He said, okay, that is not an issue at all. He can do that. Then he asked the second queen, what do you want from London? She asked, some great fashion people are there in London, all fashion designers, etc. And so she told the name of a fashion house, some name, and you get me the dresses befitting a queen, the best of that fashion house. So she gave some dimensions and all that. So some parameters to get the dresses. He said, not a problem. He put the paper in his pocket, he will get. He asked the third queen, from London, what do you want? She said, I'll write on a piece of paper and give you. She wrote and gave it a piece of paper and requested you open it when you are coming back. He said, that is fine. Why should I know now? He put in his pocket. Just before coming back, a day or two before, I will open it and whatever she wanted, I will bring. That is what he thought. He went. Now after a month, he is coming back. He procured the diamond necklace and packed. Procured these special dresses, packed. Then the third queen, what should I take? He took out this paper. In that it is written, I want you. Then he was surprised. And he gave a thought, what should I take to her? And it never occurred to him what he should take. Because she says, I want you. And what is her taste, what items she needs, he just did not have a clue to any of that. Therefore he decided, time is also over to go to the ship. So he decided, okay, then if that is what she wants, then that is what she gets. So he entered the ship and came back. Came to the palace, called a servant and gave a box, give it to the first queen. Another box, give this to the second queen. And he went to the third queen. That is the story. So, you worship Ishvara like that. Anihaya. Then you will discover Ishvara as the Atma. Ishvara is no different from you. So, O Ishvara, I want you. Then he will give himself to you. How? He is the Atma. The Atma is Ishvara. There is no difference between the two. That is the verse. Sarvesham api bhutanam Hariratmeshwarah priyah Bhutair mahadbhisvakrutaihi Kritanam jiva samujnitaha. Sarvesham bhuta. This Hari, Ishvaraha, is the Atma, not only to you or to me, but also to all living beings. That is the Atma. You see, I tell you, it is something like this. You may find it a bit odd, but then truth is always like that. Whatever appears in the very first glance is not the truth. You should know that. For example, it looks as if the sun rises and sets, and sun goes this way, like a parabolic or circular path. He goes round the earth. And then moon also goes round the earth. Stars, they also go round the earth. Therefore, in 13th century or 12th century, in Europe, they made a model of the universe. In that model, universe is spherical and earth is the center of the universe. And the universe is static. Earth is static. Universe is static. But there are a few things that are moving in that static universe. And the sun is one of them, moving. How is this? They thought that they have formulated extremely well, because that is what you observe. So, you believe me, whatever appears to you is just like that. It is false. Therefore, what appears to a first glance is never the truth. So, you are different, he is different, she is different, I am different, all differences. So, for example, Indians are different, Russians are different, British are different, Americans are different. What is different? Everything is different. Body color is different. Even the blood vessels are different. Indian blood vessels are prone for cholesterol deposits more than American blood vessels. They are different. Everything is different. Culture is different. And the color of the skin is of course different. Everything is different. That is the superficial look. But the human consciousness is just the same everywhere. For example, Indians are unfulfilled and unhappy and insecure. Right? Just let me take it like that. Don't get disturbed by what I said. Then come to Russia. The Russians are unfulfilled, unhappy, insecure and afraid. Come to British. They are unfulfilled, insecure and unhappy. Come to Russia, America. Insecure, unfulfilled and unhappy. Come to Canada, the same. What is the difference? They are not different at all. The human consciousness is fundamentally insecure and unsatisfied. That is what human consciousness is, fundamentally. So what is the difference? The physical body is different, the minds are different, the stuff of the mind in the form of religion and culture, they are different. But deep within, we are all insecure and unfulfilled. That's why we have desires and fears. Is this different anywhere? It is not different at all. You go to South America, same. You go to Japan, same. Human consciousness is just the same. Therefore, you should not assume the differences are real. There is a unity underlying all these differences. You should know that. There is a unity underlying differences. And then one more thing. Differences are namarupa, names and forms, and hence apparitional, unreal. Whereas the underlying unity alone is real. You should know that. You should work it out in your mind quite well. Like the bulbs are different, the fans are different, the exit sign is a different color, this bulb is a different color, TV is different, heater is different, refrigerator is different, fan is different. All are different. Computer is different. So, record player is different, everything is different. But they all have the same power inward. Behind them, behind their functions, there is the same power that makes them function. That is the electricity. Simple example. So you should always look for that unity. That underlying is always one, same, never different. Like a tree is growing. Why? Why is it growing like that? Because there is life in it. Very nice. Then another tree is growing. Why? Because there is life in it. Now you understand, you think about it. Is the life different between in the two trees? Or maybe it is the same life in both trees. In fact, it is the same life. In fact, the entire forest is growing because the trees are different, plants are different, but the life in all of them is just the same. The same is the life in animals when they are roaming. Same is the life in the birds when they are flying. Same is the life in the creatures when they are crawling. Same is the life in the humans when they are thinking and doing things. That life, which is one cosmic life, one without the second, that is the God. That is the reality. And that is Ishvara. That life is Ishvara. Ishvaraha. And so that Ishvara is the Atma, the essence of all life forms. Sarvesham api bhutanam Atma. Now these bhutas, how they came into existence? Bhutair mahadbhihi kritanam. They are created or manufactured, these bhutas are manufactured or put in place by Mahabhutas, Panchabhutas. So what is a life form? A human being is standing there. What is he? Standing. So Prithvi, abdomen, come to abdomen, apaha, come to stomach, tummy. Tummy is fire, I tell you. Tummy is fire. You can feel it now itself. You don't need any proof. You are the proof. Tummy is fire. Tummy is not the flesh and all that. It is fire. You see, compare tummy below and tummy above, and tummy stands out. It just stands out. Right? It stands out. It is always demanding. Kawal, a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, some snack, some cookie, some this, some that. It is different. It is unique. It is. Really fire only. Some fire is sitting there, always demanding fuel. That is fire. That is true. Then come to chest. Chest is very unique. Nothing like the chest in the body. Nothing like it. It is always inhaling and exhaling. Who makes it inhale and exhale non-stop? Only Bhagavan should know. I don't know. It is always a wonder. It is a mystery. This is the miracle. People want miracles. This is the miracle. I am not doing it. Then who is doing it? And why doing it? I don't know. You see, a boy was asked, in the high school, the teacher asked the boy, who wrote Mahabharata? He told, I did. So like that. So really, that is the truth. So here, who is inhaling and exhaling? I am not inhaling and exhaling, not me. You please don't blame me. I am not inhaling, I am not exhaling. Chest is air, it is. Prana, air. That air goes in, and all the oxygen gets absorbed. Most of it gets absorbed. If you keep the lungs clean and quite well serviced by pranayama, you have to do some servicing. Like carburetor is cleaned occasionally in the car. Like that, by pranayama, the upper lobes and the lower lobes are cleaned. And so it is in a very fresh shape by pranayama. Pranayama makes it like that. Then most of the oxygen that goes in gets absorbed. And then some carbon dioxide goes in, but a lot more carbon dioxide comes out. Oh my God, this is a wonder. Carbon dioxide comes out like that. Where for this carbon dioxide, where from carbon is coming? The food that you eat provides the carbon. Oxygen is already you are taking intake. And all this is happening so many times in a minute, 20 times or 50, I don't know how many times it is happening. Whole life it is happening. This is Vayu. Don't bother about heart, this and that. It is just Vayu. And this is Akasha, space, neck and above. This is how the living being is a conglomerate of the five elements. They come together and make him. Bhutair mahadbhihi kratanam. They are called Mahabhuta. You know why Mahabhuta? They are everywhere. Every person's pair of legs are Prithvi. Every person's tummy, abdomen is apaha. Every person's tummy is fire. They are everywhere. The entire universe is pervaded by them. That's why they are called Mahabhuta, like Mahasamudra. These Mahabhutas put that body in place. And in that body reflects or inhabits the Atma. And who is that Atma? Same Atma in all the bodies. So bodies may be different. How they are different? The space seems to separate them. Physically they are not different. If the bodies are different, you will not have a medical science. There is a thing called medical science because all bodies are same. Just the same. You have a cardiologist because all hearts function the same way. And their malfunction is also same. And you have a gastroenterologist, because all tummies are same. So anyway, even the bodies are same. But apparently the bodies seem to be many, 1, 2, 3, 4 like that, and the Atma reflecting in that bodies, in those bodies, is just one and the same. And that Atma is God, Ishvaraha. And now you hold on to the body, you end up in sorrow in the life. Give up the body. Give up means stop identifying with it. Hold on to that Ishvara, Hari, Priyaha. You will not know what is sorrow in life. So we'll continue. Om Purnamada Purnamidam